and welcome to part 2 of this video series on server virtualization, chapter 7. We're talking about planning and implementation. We're going to practice with vSphere 6.0. You're going to pretend to be an intern for this corporation. We're going to think about some of the things you need to consider anytime you plan an installation. Sorry. In any case, the one bottom line, and there's a couple things to keep in mind here. Everything you know about the system's development lifecycle remains true. You do need to think about your requirements, what your user needs, what your customer needs you to do, what they already have. We assume that they're already kind of in a VMware, either in a VMware ecosystem already, and are maybe adding, going from, say, desktop virtualization with just VMware Workstation to a data center virtualization with ESXi hosts and vCenter. Or they're using no virtualization and they're getting into the virtualization space and they don't already have an existing commitment to, say, the Microsoft ecosystem. The good news is the book doesn't really list some hard and fast requirements on what your ESXi hosts need, not at least in chapter 7. Good news is there's plenty of documentation out on the net from VMware.com. So let me show you some of that. One of the things, so let's go to our installation guide. Yeah, so here we go. This is the installation and setup guide for ESXi 6.7. And so one of the things you're going to make sure that your platform is supported. There's actually something that will do that for you as well. There's a website that they have. Let me show you that, which is right here. A compatibility guide website that you can use on the basis of your target system, going all the way back to ESXi 5.5, looking at your partner name, or basically your OEM name. Looking what we're looking here. These are OEMs essentially, the partner. Features, CPUs, advanced capabilities, fault tolerance capabilities, minimum and maximum amounts of memory, number of CPU sockets, number of CPU cores, your form factor, blade, board, rack, tower, etc. You can tell it what you've got, and they can tell you whether it's going to work. The other thing you're going to need, you're going to have to, whether this is ESXi host, an ESXi system simulated the way we're simulating them as a virtual machine in a Type 2 hypervisor with, say, player or workstation, or deployed onto the bare metal as a Type 1, which is what you could see, what you can go into room 220 and see. All of the rack mounts there are running ESXi. I believe they're running 6.5. It might be 6.7 at this point. Anyways, so you can see what it would look like in the real world. You need at least 2 CPU cores. For a rack mount or for a production system like this, what you're going to want, fundamentally, is a really good motherboard with capacity for a lot of memory. If you've got 2 CPU sockets and those CPU sockets can support multiple cores, great. Multiple dies, multiple cores on each die, that would be awesome. You need at least 2. And that's even true if you're running Type 2 ESXi on top of workstation or player. And I'll show you what that looks like in my instance in just a minute. You're also going to need a 64-bit processor and a reasonably recent one. Now, granted that since 2016, since September of 2006, that's a very broad view of recent. As usual, as normal with situations like this, what you want is as much computer as you can reasonably afford. Newest processor, newest memory, everything. It does need to support the NX XD bit in the BIOS. That's the no execute bit. This helps us with data execution prevention. You also need at least 4 gigs of RAM. And honestly, 4 gigs is the bare minimum. If you're just simulating ESXi for the purpose of learning ESXi, which we're going to do, 4 gigs might be okay. But if that ESXi host is going to be supporting any other VMs, it needs more. Probably a lot more. Okay, at least 8 gigs to support 4 gigs bare minimum, 8 gigs to support VMs in a usual environment. Now, and think about how many VMs you're going to be running at the same time. And in order to support our 64-bit VMs, to support hardware virtualization, make sure that you have your processor, your chipset, the board, etc. support Intel VTX or AMD virtualization, things like that. So now let me actually show you what this looks like in my environment. So, okay. CPU has been disabled. Okay, it didn't like that. Anyway, so what I have here, I've got my ESXi host. Ooh, it didn't like that. Let me reboot that one. That is new and different. I've never seen a pink screen like this before. Anyway, so let's look at my other. Oh, Accordo. It crashed, and it crashed hard. So this is my ESXi host, and let me look at it in console mode. So I've got 4 gigs of RAM, I've got 2 processors, I've got a couple of hard disks. One of these is the data store. I've got a couple of network adapters. We'll talk about networks a little bit later. So let me go ahead and reboot this one, restart. Yes, I don't know why it decided. And this is actually, we're going to talk about DCUI later. This is what DCUI looks like. But I'll come back to this. So, okay, and it is, okay, VM kernel loading successfully. Good. Okay, so this is what we're going to simulate. So we're going to have a couple of ESXi hosts, one of them primarily running a Windows server, the other one primarily running Linux. Notice that they're both hosts exist, both VMs exist in both places. High availability and fault tolerance are a pressing concern with us. We've also got a network attached storage device. Notice it is not a SAM, it's an NAS. Notice we've also got a couple of different kinds of virtual network. We've got VM kernel ports that tie into a management network here. And then we've got virtual switch ports that tie into our production network. VM kernel, this is your management stuff. vMotion, storage vMotion, high availability, heartbeats. The virtual switches out here are for the standard data traffic. So expect for your ESXi hosts to be in multiple networks. Even if your VMs are not, your ESXi hosts have to be, because something has to carry all that management traffic. Now, we are going to use VMware Workstation Player. You can create a virtual sandbox. We can create, we can learn about vSphere without dealing with all the extra equipment that we might need. No. There's a downside. Player will only allow 32-bit operating systems in the ESXi host. What I've actually done is do this in Workstation, so I get all the extra whistles and bells. Now we can use a Windows 32-bit version of Windows 10. What you're really doing here is getting some familiarity with the concepts. We're going to take the knowledge the foundation of knowledge we build now and build into it next week with vCenter and the platform services controller and all of that. So the next thing I'll talk about is the ESXi console, how to actually talk to your ESXi hosts. So thanks, and we'll be right back.